Dark Seduction. Chapter 1, The Charmer. Daniel was a man of sharp looks and sharper wit. With tousled dark hair and piercing emerald eyes, he had a way of making women feel special, even when they were merely a means to his end. He'd perfected the art of seduction, learning the secrets of lonely hearts and their empty bank accounts. Each woman he preyed upon was like a new chapter in a book he had already read in his mind. He knew the plot well. For the past 3 years, Daniel had traveled from city to city, targeting wealthy women suffering from loneliness or heartbreak. He would meet them at lavish parties, charity galas, or high-end shops. He ensnared them in his web with every charming smile and whispered promise, convincing them that he was their true love. Chapter 2, A New Target. Daniel found himself in a swanky art gallery in Manhattan on a cool autumn evening. He sipped a glass of expensive wine, scanning the room for his next conquest. Then, his eyes landed on her. She was stunning. Claire Thornton, a wealthy art dealer in her late 30s, with a reputation for being both elegant and elusive. Rumor had it she'd lost her husband 2 years ago and had been keeping to herself ever since. Perfect. Daniel felt the familiar thrill of anticipation. As he approached her, he adopted his usual charm. "Isn't this piece simply haunting?" he remarked, gesturing at a dark painting. Claire turned, her blue eyes locking onto his with surprise. "Yes, it certainly sends shivers down your spine," she replied, a hint of vulnerability cloaked in her words. They spent the evening discussing art, life, and loss. Daniel felt a stirring inside him that confused him. He shouldn't get attached. But there was something about Claire that pulled him in deeper, a fragility wrapped in strength. Chapter 3, The Dance of Deceit. Days turned into weeks, and Daniel found himself entrenched in a thrilling dance with Claire. They met frequently, sharing dinners at exquisite restaurants and quiet walks in Central Park. Claire, still haunted by her late husband, found solace in Daniel's charm. He was, after all, the man who made her laugh, who listened as she spoke of her past, and who brought her flowers as if she were a queen. "Tell me about you, Daniel," Claire asked one night, wrapped in his embrace, bathed in the soft glow of candlelight. "What do you do?" "I'm just a simple man, Claire," he replied, his voice smooth like silk. "I dabble in a bit of this and that." It was all part of his game. He spoke about his past and dreams, crafted tales that painted him as the perfect partner, a man who understood suffering. She fell deeper. Chapter 4, The Descent. As their relationship deepened, so did Daniel's plans to ensnare her financially. He began to drop hints about his financial struggles, concocting lies about being in between jobs and needing to settle debts, all while weaving tales of fancy vacations and dreams of starting a business. "I'm here for you, Daniel," Claire said, her empathy overflowing. "I want to help you." Daniel's heart raced at the thought of the cash he could extract from her. "It's okay, I don't want to burden you," he'd say, a sorrowful expression etched on his face, all while calculating how much she would willingly send him. Chapter 5, The Trap Closes. As time went on, Daniel felt a growing sense of dread alongside the thrill. Claire trusted him. She would send money for his business, and even offered to lend him more when he promised to pay it back with interest once he got on his feet. He had never grown this close to anyone before, and the scam felt more sinister with each passing day. But greed drowned out guilt. He would steal her money, break her heart, and move on. It was the plan, after all. One fateful night, he called Claire, feigning distress. "I've gotten into a terrible situation, Claire. I need your help now more than ever." With worry etched on her face, she listened as he spun a tale about a stolen investment. "I need $100,000. It's all I need to get back on my feet." Silence filled the line, and a heavy weight hung in the air. "Are you sure, Daniel?" she asked, a hint of doubt in her voice. "I promise I'll make it up to you. Just trust me," he coaxed. Her trust was his greatest weapon. Chapter 6: The Perfect Night. That night, Daniel felt the thrill of victory and the chill of betrayal. Claire agreed to send him the money, and they decided to celebrate at her luxurious penthouse. He arrived, a bouquet of roses in hand, a facade of joy masking the malevolence brewing inside. They drank wine and laughed, only for the atmosphere to shift when Daniel leaned closer. "Claire, there's something I need to tell you," he said, his voice low and intimate. "What is it?" she asked, eyes shimmering with trust. "I've never met anyone like you before. You see, my past, it has been full of pain. I don't exactly deserve someone like you." Tears glistened in her eyes as she took his hand. "You deserve happiness, Daniel." Inside, Daniel's heart twisted. He fought the urge to turn back. Just a little longer, he thought. Just until I take the money and leave. Chapter 7: Sudden Darkness. Yet, with each passing moment, Daniel grappled with emotions he struggled to suppress. For a brief instant, he thought of running away with Claire by his side, starting anew. But temptation loomed larger. After a few more glasses of wine, Claire led him to her bedroom, where laughter turned into shared intimacy. Daniel wrapped her in his arms, the blissful moment consuming them both. But as their passion heated, his mind spiraled. Questions tormented him. Could he really betray her? Could he follow through? Suddenly, the doorbell rang, snapping him back to reality. Who could it be? Daniel's heart raced, unsure if he should answer or hide. "Stay here," he whispered urgently to Claire before heading to the door. Chapter 8: The Shocking Revelation. Daniel peered through the peephole, and his blood ran cold. Standing there was a figure from his past, Maddie, an accomplice he thought he had long escaped. Maddie had been close to him during his earlier scams, but she knew too much, and he had cut ties fearfully. "Daniel, I know you're in there," she shouted, her voice dripping with menace. "I'm not leaving until we talk." He glanced back at Claire, who looked up from the bedroom, concern etched across her beautiful features. "Don't answer it," Claire whispered, panic rising in her voice. But it was too late. Daniel's decision was already made, and no force could stop him from facing the consequences of his deceit. Chapter 9: Betrayal Unveiled. Daniel opened the door, and there stood Maddie, a sly grin on her face that made his stomach turn. "Miss me," she taunted, her eyes darting toward Claire, who stood frozen in fear. "What do you want?" Daniel hissed, trying to keep his voice steady. "I want the money you owe me," she said, her tone firm. "We had an agreement." "I'm not helping you with anything," he spat, fear gripping his heart for the woman he had deceived. But Maddie wasn't done. "Oh, I figured, but you see, I've been watching you. And I know all about this rich lady you've got wrapped around your little finger," she said with a smirk. Daniel's gut dropped. "You wouldn't dare. Try me. I can ruin you. Let's go for a ride, shall we?" Chapter 10: The Cliffhanger. Before he knew what was happening, Maddie lunged past him, and in that moment, everything shifted. Claire stood close behind, a look of horror dawning as she pieced together the truth about Daniel's deception. "Claire, wait," he began, but Maddie interjected. "She needs to know the truth. All those stories? Lies. You're nothing but a thief." The room grew silent as Claire's eyes widened, realization crashing over her like a wave. "No, Daniel? This can't be true," she whispered, betrayal etched into her features. "Claire, I can explain," he pleaded, desperation wrapping around him like a noose. But before he could reach her, Maddie seized her, pulling Claire away from him. You think you can run off with her money and leave me here? Not a chance. Claire trembled as fear took hold, and Daniel felt rage boil over. Get away from her, he shouted, lunging toward Maddie, but she was quicker. Chapter 11, The Unraveling. Maddie pulled a knife from her pocket, placing it dangerously close to Claire's throat. Back off, Daniel, or she pays the price. Panic exploded in Daniel's mind. He had orchestrated this heist, and now he was losing control. Please, Maddie, think about what you're doing. This isn't necessary. His voice wavered, laced with desperation. Claire's tears fell freely, and she looked at Daniel with a mix of fear and disbelief. How could you do this? She asked, her voice trembling. I'm sorry. I needed the money, he shouted back, his own heart breaking as he realized how far he had fallen. Chapter 12, The Final Gamble. Daniel, what are we going to do? Claire cried, her eyes filled with fear. Stay back. Maddie threatened. Your perfect life will unravel if Daniel doesn't hand over the money he owes me tonight. Realizing he was cornered, Daniel made a choice. He rushed forward, using his body as a shield between Claire and Maddie. Get out of here, he yelled, adrenaline pumping through his veins. In a split second, he grabbed Maddie's wrist, twisting it and forcing the knife to the ground. Their struggle continued, and finally, it was Claire who surprised them both. Enough! She shouted and pushed them apart. Leave. Now. Daniel turned to her, realizing she was standing taller than before, stronger. All his manipulation had transferred power into her hands. Suddenly, police sirens wailed outside, growing louder and closer. Claudia had called for help. Chapter 13, The Conclusion. In the chaos, Maddie darted through the door, escaping into the night like a shadow. Daniel turned to find Claire, who was staring at him with disappointment. You lied to me. Everything was a lie, she whispered, her voice breaking but her resolve unyielding. I'm sorry, Claire. I didn't want it to be like this. I didn't expect to fall in love with you. His heart ached with the weight of regret. Police officers burst through the door, commanding Daniel to step back with their guns drawn. Hands up, they shouted. As he complied, he glanced back at Claire one last time. The pain in her eyes pierced through him, a reminder that for once, he had not only hurt someone but also lost the one thing he had begun to cherish. I'll get out of this, he whispered, hoping she could hear him before they led him away in handcuffs. But the truth was, as the door closed behind him, he realized he had done more than just lose a woman, he had lost himself in the darkness of his lies. Epilogue, Shadows of the Past. Months passed, and Daniel found himself in a stark prison cell, his dark charm having ultimately led to his downfall. He spent countless hours reflecting on the shattered trust and the life he could have built with Claire. Somewhere out there, Claire thrived. She rebuilt her life, filled it with art and hope, and healed from the betrayal. Daniel's name became nothing but a painful memory. Occasionally, she would think of him, not with love, but as a shadow of her past. As he sat in his cell, alone with his thoughts, Daniel regretted every choice he had made. In the quiet of the night, he had only the whispers of his past to keep him company, a dark reminder that sometimes, the happiest moments can indeed emerge from the darkest intentions. And in his heart, he knew the truth, he had claimed many hearts, but it was his own heart he had truly scammed.